And we are joined by my friend Darren McKee. DMac is the name you know him all by, and he's been, and I think, is it 3 decades now? DMac, you've been in the radio industry here in Colorado.
I started in 99. So what are we doing? I'm just in the end of 99, zeros, tens, and whoa. I guess technically that would be 4 decades, Troy. How about that? Crazy, right?
Yeah, you've been around because I got to call back to Colorado for a long amount of times, calling 96, September 96.
Okay.
So we've both been in the market for a bit.
Yes, we have.
You are a professional agitator. No one does it better than you. I tell people this, like they just, and if they've met you, they know you the person, but you are an amazing a host and do this as well as anybody that's done it in the 30 years I've been here. And you are now on it. For those who want to listen, DMac, again, it's on noon to 3 PhD with Tyler Columbus, Scott Hastings, and DMac on Altitude on 92.5.
Yes.
And I'm bringing you on today. You do a million sports. You can see the great setup he has. You can see Killing You with the Truth with his podcast that is just absolutely taken off. No surprise. But today we're just going to talk Broncos. You and I both cover all sports now, which is what I love about being a columnist. But today's Broncos.
Okay.
And we're not that far away. Next week, we're going to have that introductory press conference type thing, the barbecue, and then there you go. We're off. This is the first time where we don't have to pretend they're going to have a winning season. They're in transition, DMac. So there's pessimism, but there's reasons for optimism as well. We'll start kind of from the back and go backward in here, or at the end and go to the beginning. What for you would constitute a good season for the Broncos, given that most objective people think they're probably between a 5 and 7 win team?
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the wins total. I'm not. I don't think it's a playoff team, and I think it's foolish to even consider that. They have to pay the price, Troy, of taking the 53-32 split. That's the split on Russell Wilson's contract. And they decided to take a heavier hit in year one. Next year, they'll have $100 million in cap space. Next year, they'll do a big deal for Pat Surtain and Quinn Miners and have hopefully some money for some sort of playmaker. That's what they're really missing right now. And watching Receiver, fantastic documentary produced by Omaha Productions, Peyton Manning on Netflix. It just was like, wow, man, we just don't have one of these guys. And they featured George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and one other guy. Devontae Adams. And watching this, Troy, all 5 very special dudes. The Broncos just don't have anybody like that. And they're going to have to go find them and maybe pay them. But they're going to pay Surtain and Miners. So what I want this year, Troy, I just want, for the first time in forever, the Broncos to be on the same page with ownership, GM, coach, and quarterback. And I think that is what we have. To me, this year is nothing more than the development of Bo Nix and then moving forward to next year. And next year, I think it's fair to see them in the playoffs.
Yeah, that would be a big challenge because let's say they go 6-11. I mean, I think that's where I have them. And in a weird world, maybe they could get to 9 wins. But when Broncos Country and fans ask me that, I'm out grocery shopping, whatever, and they say they're going to win 9 or 10 games, I always say, where are they going to win road games? Like, that's the issue when you're not very good, is if you're not stable at quarterback, it's really hard to win on the road. But I'm with you. Like, you and I have a baseball background in a lot of ways. You can sacrifice seasons to develop players.
Sure.
I know they don't see it that way, but you can sacrifice a season to develop a quarterback. He just can't be so far underwater. He can't be Bronny James and look like he doesn't belong. And, my concern with Bo Nix is, do they have enough weapons to keep his head above water? Because I don't want him to go 2-14, or let's say 2-10, miss a few games with an injury with 16 picks and 5 touchdowns. That's hard to leave a season with optimism, even if you're saying he's the guy. Is there enough there with Sean Payton and some unproven guys to where they can scheme it up to you think he can be, at water level to where you leave the season feeling good about him, DMac?
Yeah, I think so, because his completion percentage is so high, and he's kind of this, and I mean this in a complimentary way, a football robot. Meaning put it in front of him, he'll execute it. The issue the Broncos are going to have is they don't, again, have the playmakers that can take a short 3, 4, 5-yard pass and turn it into a 30-yard play or a touchdown or something like that. They just don't really. unless it's Troy Franklin or Marvin Mims or somebody that I'm not aware of. Okay. So that being said, I think what you really just don't want is some sort of catastrophic injury. If you have a lot of interceptions, as long as he still has a modicum of confidence, you don't want him to see ghosts either. But in general, you see ghosts when you get hit, not throwing interceptions, getting hit. And that's what happened to Trevor Siemian back in the day. But the strongest part of the Broncos story, I think, is the offensive line. I mean, look at it top to bottom, and we'll figure out who the center's going to be. But, I mean, Bowles, he's, arguably the best left tackle you've ever had, or certainly in that conversation. Powers is a high-paid guard. Center, we'll see. Miners is one of the top guards in the country, in the league, rather. And McGlinchey's a pretty high-paid guy over there at right tackle. I think you're okay there. I think if you keep Bo Nix upright, I don't really care that much about the interceptions. I don't want to see him play poorly, but more importantly, I don't want to see his confidence get destroyed because he's getting crushed.
And the key to that, to me, DMac, is you got to run the ball. You just talked about the offensive line.
Sure.
The strength of this offense is the offensive line. I know people rip them. They're terrible in pass pro. I will say this. Internally, they thought they were much better at pass protection than the numbers showed. Sean Payton blames probably more than half of Russell Wilson's sacks on Russell Wilson.
Sure.
And again, McGlinchey's got to play better, no doubt. And they got to figure out the center position, because Lloyd Cushenberry did turn the corner last year. But this is a team that's built to run the ball. Yeah. Bowles is a great run blocker. Powers is a good run blocker. McGlinchey, that's his strength, is run blocking. Mm-hmm. Miners is one of the best run blockers, interior run blockers in the game. So for me,
there you go.
DMac, if you can get to 3rd and 4s, Bo Nix will be fine because he's mobile. The one thing, seeing him in person, he's bigger than I thought, and he's a little faster than I thought. He's more physical. If they can play 3rd and 5 down, I think he'll be fine. It's just he's not built. Most rookie quarterbacks aren't. Frankly, they can't overcome dysfunction of 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. Mm-hmm. But if they can get him in positions where you've got multiple choices of him either running or having he need 4 yards, I think they got something. Do you think, though, they can run the ball when we're sitting here? Normally, I'd say that's a given. I don't even know who their starting running back's going to be.
Well, it's going to be interesting because what do you got here? We got Javonte, Audric Estime, Samaje Perine, Blake Watson. Don't sleep on Blake Watson, the undrafted guy. Jaleel McLaughlin, and I think that's it. I think I got him there. So, obviously you cannot keep Perine and Javonte Williams. They're certainly going to keep Estime unless he gets injured. You could also always dump Blake Watson, and I think you're going to keep Jaleel McLaughlin. So I think really what it comes down to, and this is a tricky one, man, like who would you rather have? I mean, how many? Oh, and don't forget, we've got Burton as a fullback, right? Yeah. So Burton as a fullback, he makes the team. Okay, Jaleel's going to make the team. Okay, Troy, how many running backs are we keeping here? What else are we doing here? Right. Perine was the best pass receiver of those running backs out of the backfield. We'll see what happens with Javonte Williams, but that is going to be, if I had to just sort of predict some sort of vet cut, somebody, and there's always an interesting vet cut, I'd keep my eyes on Javonte Williams.
Yeah, he could be in trouble because if you decide you want Perine, the veteran, with the rookie quarterback, and you look at it and go, Estime and Javonte are 50-50, could go either way, you probably go with the young guy at that point. And it's like when Mark Sanchez was with the Broncos. Like, if he's not the starter, he wasn't on the team. Right. And Javonte could fall into that. If he's not the starter, is he on the team? Because Perine is really good on 3rd down. That's what his skill set. I know he wants to play more. And, maybe he doesn't feel like he fits and wants out. He doesn't want to be on a bad team. So that opens a spot for Javonte because he can catch the football. He's not basically typecast to where he can't. But I agree. I liked he had put his weight back on this spring. Mm-hmm. He looked more physical, but he didn't look like the guy I saw his rookie year. Last year, he ran out of gas.
Yeah.
3.2 yards a carry over those last, 10 games. That was a problem. So we'll see. I mean, then you look at receiver, like you said, maybe Mims becomes a guy or Franklin. At tight end, is it Lucas Kroll? I can't count on Dulcich at this point. Anything he gives me, I just say, okay, I'll take it because I can't count on him, DMac.
Yeah, man. See, here we go. We're going back to the beginning here. Who are the playmakers, Troy?
They're not. Well, there's unproven guys I'll give the benefit of the doubt to. But people always tell me Cortland Sutton. And I say, listen, he had 10 touchdowns last year. He had 2 in his previous 26 games. He just figured out what Jerry Jeudy couldn't. Whenever Russell Wilson scrambled, he went with him. Just follow him like we're connected by string. He figured it out. That's not an advantage this year necessarily. And Sutton, again, I don't dislike Sutton. On any good team, he's a 2. Any good team. Josh Reynolds has been a 3 on every team he's been on. So I try to tell people, like, when you start talking about Broncos weapons, I'm like, do you guys watch Red Zone or do you play fantasy football? Because if you do, tell me who you're drafting off the Broncos team offensively.
Right. And here's what's going to happen, because they're all just going to be competing against each other. And that's what the fans and the media are going to see. It's going to look like, wow, what a competition. And like, how great are these guys? What we're not seeing is how good all the other guys are in the league. And when you only look at your own guys, it kind of feels like this is really exciting and this is really cool. And that's why, like, I'm watching Receiver on Netflix. It's like, oh, yeah. They're really, really good. Like
you brought up a great point real quickly, because when the Rams came in last year for the joint practices, it was unbelievable how much faster and better their weapons looked on the outside.
Right.
Unbelievable in person. Anyway, go on.
Right. No. I mean, that's the point. And at the end of the day, if you don't have those and this is what stings about Jerry Jeudy. And we'll see what happens with him with the Browns, right? I mean, golly, man, if he explodes and is all of a sudden something really special. And Isaiah McKenzie was pretty good when he went to Buffalo after he left the Broncos. So, I mean, we'll see. But to think of that draft with CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jerry Jeudy, and we got Jeudy, it's just like, man, dude, like it kind of stings, because there were game changers in the draft. We just didn't get them. And in that draft too, we doubled down with KJ Hamler, who's gone as well. So you just had an empty draft there when you tried to get 2 big playmakers.
To take them back to back made no sense. There's just made no sense to take Hamler after you took Jeudy. Jeudy, I do blame some of the quarterback changes, some of the coordinator, but for me, and you can understand the analogy, he's like a showcase player in baseball. You watch him practice, he does so many things right, but instinctively in a game, he had trouble adjusting to mediocre to bad quarterback play. Because he could run the right route. He did his assignment, but it's like, I know, but the quarterback's not in with you. So at some point you have to adapt to the quarterback, because he insists that he's doing the right thing all the time. And I'm not disagreeing with him, because he and I would talk. He's like, watch the film. And I'm like, yeah, but when Russell's eyes go down 2 seconds into the play, like, you've gone with him. And so I hope he does fine. I have nothing against Jeudy, but you're right. When you see, especially Jefferson is a player I never expected him to be. And even Ruggs, who's in a prison cell, he was better than Jeudy. And I didn't see that. I saw him as a one-trick pony. He was better. So, they just need weapons. Defensively, DMac, we'll get to that side of the ball now. I think they have improved their line with Roach, John Franklin Myers. Is there enough defensively there in Vance Joseph's second year, a simplified scheme, to keep them in games, to keep them competitive? That was the key to their 5-game win streak, was lower scoring games and turn the heck out of the ball.
Well, there's so many unanswered questions. Like, how's Brandon Jones going to be as a safety, and Levi Wallace as a corner? And oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the inside linebacker guy who's the new Cody Barton. Yeah. And so, there's 3 guys who may be starters that we don't know anything about. And at the end of the day, like all games, can you stop the run, right? And can you put pressure on the quarterback? So out of, Browning and Benito and, these guys, like who's going to bring that pass rush? I think Benito could be sneaky good, Troy. I do. I actually think the pass rush of the Broncos could be sneaky good. Jonathan Cooper, I mean, it really rests on, because Drew Sanders is hurt, right? And he'll be out for a while.
I'm not sure when we see him. Maybe December.
Right. So forget about him. So it really comes down to, and the rookie Jonah Ellis, right? So
I like Ellis. I like
Okay.
Browning too as an X factor guy if he stays healthy. One of those guys, they haven't had a 10-sack guy, 10 sacks since Chubb and Von Miller did it in
Who do
18.
you think is the most likely of those pass rushers to get that number?
For me, if you're talking about athletically profiling to do it, it's Browning. But
Okay.
he's just not healthy. Like he misses 4 or 5 games every year. You can't get to that number without playing like 15, 16 games.
I'm going to say it's Nick Bonito because I think Nick Bonito could pile up sacks in the right setting. Meaning if it's just the right matchup, it's the right kind of day, I could see a 3-sack game out of Nick Bonito. And those numbers just kind of add up after a little bit. Boy, that'd be great if it was, right? And not that I'm rooting against Baron Browning. They have a lot invested in him theoretically. But look out for Nick Bonito. I think that could be kind of interesting. And hey, man, if there's something great out of Jonah Ellis, one thing that Sean Payton made a mistake with, and he needs to correct, Troy, you got to play your young guys, okay?
Yeah,
you can't be afraid of it. You didn't nearly utilize Mims the way you should have. You can't make that mistake again.
Yeah, I agree. Because again, it's a transitional year. He's got to trust him. You bring up a great point about Bonito. He's got the best first step on the team as an edge guy. The issue with him is he was kind of a one-trick pony in the way he rushed. He buried his moves last year. He's got to be able to stay on the field for more downs to get a little sturdier against the run. The reason Cooper leads him in sacks is because he plays the most. Because he can hold the edge. Right. Browning, I actually like Browning better as an inside backer than I do outside, but he's now had like a year and a half to adjust to the role, and he's a freak athlete. He was one of the top 10 recruits in the country out of high school. Like he's that guy. So it's there, but he's got to stay healthy, and he's betting on himself. He's the one you can invest in as a personal stock, and you can literally invest as a fan in his future. I think he's got a chance. The issue they run into is they've got to be close in games to force teams to pass. And that's the issue that when they've sucked these last 7-8 years, it takes Surtain out of the game.
Correct.
It took Von Miller out of the game.
Correct.
Because you're down 14-3 or 21-10 in the fourth quarter. Teams don't pass.
Right.
And but I do think they're going to be better defensively. As Alex Sampson told me when I said, what's the key, early in the season, he said, don't suck. They were terrible. They were terrible in a 3-game stretch in September, Washington, Chicago, and Miami. It's arguably, I never looked that set up, but it's got to be the worst 3-game stretch in franchise history.
Well, yeah.
Points allowed. Yeah. And every guy said they've simplified the scheme. I think Vance Joseph, players connect with him. He doesn't point fingers. He's calmer than a lagoon. Guys like him. Can they play for him out of the gate, DMac? Because that's the key. And because what's so crazy about this, their offense has no skill players, but if they don't play well, who's going to get blamed? It's going to be Vance Joseph with Jim Leonard sitting there.
No doubt about it. Because Sean Payton has nothing to worry about, but a 5-win season, there'll be a scapegoat. There will be. 100%. That will happen. So I hope it's not VJ, man. I like VJ. I root for VJ. By the way, my favorite lagoon by a mile was Gilligan's Island. I think that was officially a lagoon, and perhaps that made it so hard for the rescue ships to find them.
Who are some of the players that you think? Because I don't want to make a Broncos podcast because Broncos Country listens to this, and they understand I'm a realist, but I don't want it to be they're terrible. It's like they're terrible. Yeah. Why should anyone watch when I'm doing a Broncos podcast? And I do see shreds of optimism, but take the quarterback situation out for a second. We'll get back to that. Are there a couple of players you think that could surprise people that, a few months into the season, are like, man, I didn't know that guy had that. And they might be 2-4, but this guy here, he's got something.
Well, I mean, you hope Riley Moss is one of those guys playing in the secondary, right? You hope that he rises up to that. I think Estime is going to get a lot of people's attention. I think when the fans see Audric Estime, it's going to be like, I think that he's going to be a quick fan favorite. He may be the most muscular, sort of athletic dude. I mean, this dude is a brick, Troy. And to see him this spring, and I know we didn't see a ton of him because he got hurt relatively early on, and I hope he's okay. They said he would be okay at the beginning of camp. but I think that could really catch people's attention. And then, of course, the great unknown is what else can Mims actually do if given the opportunity. And he was complaining about Russ not getting the ball last year, if you remember. And also, is there some spark there with Troy Franklin? And then, of course, the quarterback situation is going to be the most interesting of all, but I know you want me to take it out.
Well, I'll stop you there. Yeah, and Mims, listen, Sean Payton, for the love of God, give the guy the damn ball.
Of course.
He's the only guy that had a 100-yard game as a receiver last year, and you keep telling me why he can't play on an offense that's not scoring. It's like the guy going 4 for 8. Well, I got to keep him on the bench because I got to keep starting the guys 1 for 30. Like, what the hell are we doing? We got to hit. We're not good enough to have guys that aren't producing. But the quarterback position, and it's just fascinating because watching, and I'll raise this question with you. People ask me all the time, who's going to start? For me, it was obvious when they drafted. It's Bo Nix. But then I watched spring. Stidham's ahead. Yeah. He's gaming the system. He looks like Charlie checked down to me, even though Davis Webb insists that's not the case. And in fairness, we only saw, 5 of the 16 practices, whatever it was.
True.
But it looked like a guy who was gaming the system. Check down. Don't turn it over. I can win the job. But I thought for sure it's Nix. But then my thinking is being around Payton more, the gravitational pull to win games, because he's not buying into the idea of rebuilding at all. Is there a scenario where Stidham starts the first couple and then Nix comes in? It makes no sense to me, but he talks about the locker room and competition. So if it's close, it's got to be Nix. But if it's not, Payton's backed himself into a corner here, DMac, that if it's clear the Stidham's better. So how do you think it plays out? Because the odds that are out on every sports book has it clear that it's either going to be Nix or Zach Wilson. I don't see any scenario when Zach Wilson starts, me personally. How do you see this shaking out? What should the fans expect both in camp and then game one?
Well, I don't think we know yet, but it's a fascinating conversation because the player who probably should get cut, because they really don't, NFL teams don't carry 3 quarterbacks on the 53. The quarterback that should probably get cut should be the quarterback who is best prepared to start the season in Jarrett Stidham. Right. Now, follow this kind of circular logic. Like you're saying, Stidham is the best option now. But similar to Teddy Bridgewater, we already know what the ceiling is with Jarrett Stidham. We do. And it's not the future. And the fact that they even started Bridgewater ahead of Drew Lock is another confounding situation. If you want to win games later on, play Teddy Bridgewater, I guess, but you got to know what you got in Drew Lock back in the day. So that decision made absolutely no sense because in what world is Drew Lock a great backup quarterback? Stidham and Bridgewater, Troy, are great backup options. They're backup quarterbacks. You know what the limits are. This is why Zach Wilson is actually pretty intriguing because who knows what the limits are with Zach Wilson. And don't forget, Zach Wilson has 34 starts. That's a lot. That is a ton of starts. So, but don't also forget this. He's with the Jets, bro. The only team worse than the Broncos and not making the playoffs over the past 14 years. So how do we really know what we have there? We know what we got in Stidham, and he's the best prepared to win game one. But Troy, and this is the big question, is it about beating Seattle in game one or being a better team for the future? And if it's about being a better team for the future, it's like in Moneyball when Brad Pitt goes, "Oh, well, you're not starting what's his face tonight. I just cut him." It's like that. It's almost that identical scenario. So, okay, what do you want to do, Sean Payton? Is it about winning week one, perhaps being good in week two, or going forward with the future? If you want to make it easy on yourself, just cut Stidham and just give those reps to Nix. And you never know with Zach Wilson. But Stidham, we already know, Troy. We already know.
And that's the fascinating thing is we all know and see it as a transitional / rebuilding year. Payton is not framing it that way. In my conversation with Greg Penner, he's not framing it that way. That's why when people ask me, I'm like, I'm not ruling out Stidham because it's very, very easy to see by mid-August how he could be the top quarterback, just the way you can game the system as a veteran. But it does make no sense. I do see a scenario where he could make the roster with Nix because do you want it to be Gilligan's Island shipwreck, or could it be to Titanic? So if Nick starts and he's awful and you go to Zach Wilson, it could get worse. If Nick starts and is bad and you go to Stidham, it likely won't get worse. And so that's why I wonder if they say, at the very least, we got to keep Stidham around.
Yeah, but you know what? In that particular case, they're probably 1-5 or 0-6.
I agree. But I'm just saying, I could see them thinking that as a football coaches see every game as the Super Bowl.
I know they do.
That's the problem.
I know
every
they do.
year a team pops. There's parity. We can't give away any game, but they need to this year. This year has to be about the development of young players. It's got to be about everything has to be with an eye toward the future. You and I talk about this all the time. Yeah. Baseball organizations that figure it out make every decision based on what is best for our future. So you see the Astros, you see the Guardians, you see the Rays, why they get good and stay good, because they know everyone in the organization understands we're not going to play the Jake Caves of the world because he's a fan favorite. Like, we're going to play the young guys. And that's just where it has to go. Yeah. But they know who they are. The Broncos have never so I've covered the team at different times since 92. Have never, ever admitted they're rebuilding.
Well, they don't have much of a choice now. They know it. They do know it. Look how they acted in free agency, going to the dollar bin. Look at the split they took on Russell Wilson's contract, going 53-32. They know it. They do know it. And I think it's put Sean Payton, believe it or not, in kind of a good mood, a better mood, at least this past year than last year. I think there might be some bummer times, but just like a baseball team, which is funny to take this approach because they haven't for the past 8 years, but this is the smart way to go. The difference is in baseball, it does take sometimes years, not in football. In football, once you make that decision, it can happen like that over like a 2-year period. So my expectations for the Broncos, maybe 5-6 wins this year. 2025 playoffs, okay?
So you see them like the Rams or Bucks eating a bunch of cap money and turning it around in a year and a half.
I see it, yes. And if I'm trying to make it comparable, I want to use the Lions as my biggest comparable. That's where I want to go. From kind of disaster, we're going to buy in. We're going to believe in our leader. And don't forget, Dan Campbell's a protege of Sean Payton. So let's hope there's some connective DNA there. And if Dan Campbell was better at math, they should have been in the Super Bowl.
100%.
But, that's the way that goes. However, that being said, even though Prime, Deion Sanders, says he doesn't understand what culture is, which, okay, whatever, Prime. The culture of a team is what is going to lift this team up or separate it. And I think the culture of the team gets a fresh injection if everybody goes through a hard time together. If you go through a 4 or 5 win season together and you stay together, similar to how the Nuggets and Avs progress, by the way, then I think you can have a longer, stronger team down the line. So I believe in the Broncos, Troy. So it is weird to go into a season saying, hey, man, there's reasons why you should be optimistic about a 5-win season. And maybe as baseball guys, we can understand that better than instant satisfaction, gratification football fans.
Yeah,
perhaps.
I mean, he has changed the culture. They have a really good coaching staff. I mean, I've made the joke. It used to be Sesame Street out there. Now the sign's Compete Street. And Sean Payton has had charisma bypass surgery because Wilson's not here. He's in a great mood. He won't be when they go 1-3. He's going to be miserable again. But he didn't suddenly overnight become a bad coach. Now he needs to improve. He did not exactly drape himself in glory last year. I think at times he thought he was coaching the Saints, but he feels like he's finally all in Denver. Like he understands what's in place. They let him take his quarterback. So it's like, this is now his clay to mold. And I saw guys competing. They lack talent. But like to your point, you just got to find out if there's 22 starters, which 8 to 12 are going to be here in 2 years.
Right.
Like, that's just part of it. And then you surround those core guys with better players. And then you come out of it. And that's what Detroit did. It didn't just change culture. Right. You have to change the roster. You add the Gibbs from Alabama. You add Laporta. You add guys of St. Brown. Like, they didn't get good just because of culture. The culture gets right, and you add better players. So I'm with you. There's reasons for optimism, but it's going to be hard on a Sunday night. You see a Broncos fan, they just lost 30 to 10.
Right.
It feels non-competitive. That's part of it.
And those games are going to happen. So I would say appreciate when good moments happen and understand when the bad moments happen as well. And we can be certainly critical of the Rockies. And I'm critical of Bud Black because I think there's close games they could have managed much better to get wins this year. But you'd be blind not to recognize some of the good talent they do have there, Troy. I mean, it's significant. Now, can they put it all together and manage it? I mean, we're fixing to find out on that one. But I understand what is they're trying to do, at least, because it's very similar to what other major league teams are trying. And now
they get in their own way because there'll be nights they'll have Cave starting in left, and Bryant at first, and Charlie Blackmon at DH, and you're like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
I feel but you're certainly going to keep McMahon, Tovar, Brendan Rodgers. We'll see, but so far so good.
Rodgers has got to go. You got to trade Diaz. You got to get.
Right. Well, that's for sure. Damn, he doesn't
bring up Amador if he starts to hit again.
Okay.
I like Condon. I would have taken Jack Caglione. I've said that because I think he's going to hit 50 home runs in the major leagues. But Condon is who Chris Bryant used to be. That's the player he is. That's the comp. I watched them both in college. He'll be fine. And they need power. And I was really thrilled the Reds took Chase Burns because the Rockies probably would have felt compelled to take him. And they can't develop pitching. Verlander, this ace, he's down in Class A. Like, how long is he going to stay there? 5 years? Is he going to get a house? What the hell?
We got to baseball. How do we do that, Troy? How do we get to baseball here?
Promote the guy. Holy jeez. And he's starting the futures game. He's dominating. Yeah, against 18-year-olds in Class A. He's like the best pitcher in college baseball. I hope he's dominating. Holy jeez, what are we doing? But that's, again, not being aligned. Like, what are we trying to do? Every level has to be aligned. It feels like the Broncos are. And if they leave the season with a quarterback, like you said, the coach, we know who it's going to be. There's going to be one or two scapegoats, but the owner, GM, they're all on the same page. And if they go 4-13 and it doesn't look like it, I would assume George Payton's gone, and then probably Vance Joseph or somebody else is.
Troy, you're the absolute best, man.
I know you got to go. You got a show to do. I'll be listening.
I could do this all day, though, brother. I could do this all day. Let's do it again soon, for sure.
We absolutely will. We'll be in touch, folks. That is DMac. You could hear him on 92.5 from noon to 3, PhD with Tyler Columbus, Scott Hastings, and DMac. He is the best. DMac, I will see you soon.
All right, my man. Take it easy.